The backstory of BallisticNG doesn't really make much of an appearance in the game itself, but there is actually a very substantial amount of lore for the game, which can be found on the game's official wiki. This video is a narration of the backstory of each of the teams in the game. There's a link to the wiki in the description. There you can find the backstories covered here, as well as quite a few other pages of lore not included in this video. If you're looking for the backstory for a specific team, there are timestamps in the video description that will take you to each team's section. If you're looking for the Precision Delta, you'll find it in the section labeled Lance Systems, and for the NX2000, you'll find it in the section for Nexus. Otherwise, this video will be covering the teams in the order they appear in the game's menu, starting with G-Tek. Gravity Technologies. G-Tek was founded by Japanese entrepreneurs Tomoya Yamada and Kenta Iwazaki to pursue development in anti-gravity kinetics. A talented young researcher at the Waseda University Institute of Physics, Yamada had taken an interest in anti-gravity at a young age. While he was working at the university, he made sketches of an AG field generator design that he hoped would be revolutionary, but was forbidden from pursuing further development of the concept. The idea for anti-gravity field generation had existed for decades by this time, but prior experiments hadn't been able to sustain an AG field for more than a few nanoseconds, and Yamada's superiors saw AG research as an expensive dead end that would waste university funding. Rather than move to a different university, Yamada chose to leave academia and found a company to continue his research. He partnered with Kenta Iwazaki, a fellow futurist whom he had met at the 2111 Kyoto Technology Conference. An accountant by trade, Iwazaki shared Yamada's vision for AG technology and had the business knowledge to help him get the new company off the ground. In 2116, the two men established Gravity Technologies out of a warehouse in Yokohama. The early years were difficult for G-Tek. Yamada and Iwazaki repeatedly failed to convince would-be investors because they had no working prototypes to show, only crude mock-ups and blueprints. The company sat on the edge of bankruptcy for almost 3 years, their lack of any visible progress making them into somewhat of a joke among the scientific community, and especially among Yamada's former colleagues. A sustained anti-gravity field was largely seen as an impossibility at this point, and the two founders were being lambasted as fraudsters by the media, making it even harder for them to secure funding. As we now know, however, the poor reputation wouldn't last. In the early hours of the morning on February 29, 2120, the 219th iteration of Yamada's prototype AG field generator successfully suspended an apple in mid-air for 1 minute and 19 seconds before running out of power. The AG age had arrived with a wave of eaten words, and G-Tek was finally able to secure the investment needed to grow. With the sudden jolt of funding, G-Tek began a meteoric rise, claiming the first patent for a functioning AG unit and immediately finding a long line of companies eager to buy. By 2124, they had secured funding from none other than the Japanese central government, and anti-gravity was the fastest growing technology in the world. As G-Tek and more established automotive manufacturers began producing AG cars, natural experimentation with racing them showed promising results. Kenta Iwazaki took a major interest in the prospect of racing with AG and set out to create G-Tek's original racing development division in 2125. He appealed to the Japanese government for additional funding for the venture, but they refused, so he looked abroad and quickly found willing investors in Europe. As a result, the new racing development division, named G-Tek Nexus, was established in Salzburg, Austria. From here onward, Iwazaki would serve at the helm of G-Tek Nexus, while Tomoya Yamada continued to head G-Tek as a whole. With racing development made the responsibility of a subsidiary, G-Tek continued its rapid growth, becoming one of the most important companies in the world and cementing AG as a major part of modern life. At the same time, G-Tek Nexus was steadily making progress toward achieving Iwazaki's vision for AG racing, gradually setting the standards for the craft scene on the circuit today. With the showcase of the NX2000 prototype in 2133, it became clear that it was time to start working on plans for an international AG racing series. As the creators of the technology, Yamada and Iwazaki made an informal agreement to bear the responsibility of ensuring safe, competitive, and beneficial racing with AG, outlining the initial plans for the Anti-Gravity League. As part of their agreement, G-Tek Nexus would assist G-Tek Japan in the creation of its own racing team before being restructured as a fully independent company in order to help create mutually beneficial competition in the new sport. At G-Tech's annual Technology Expo in 2140, Iwasaki announced the creation of the AGL, extending an open invitation for all interested companies to participate. Immediately afterward, G-Tek sold its remaining ownership of G-Tek Nexus to its European backers, and Nexus International was created. Naturally, G-Tek has always been a cornerstone of the AGL, fielding a low-powered yet highly maneuverable craft designed to serve as an example for new entrants into the sport. Since the AGL's first season in 2144, G-Tek has served as the de facto leader of the AGL Commission, playing a large role in nearly every major decision made in the sport's history. Of course, this position has seen them involved in some controversy over the years, but they have always remained one of the most beloved teams in the sport thanks to their consistent performance and their role as the pioneers of anti-gravity. To their fans, they are seen not just as a competitor, but as the main guiding force of the AGL itself, and considering that their founders are responsible for the existence of the sport in the first place, it's difficult to argue otherwise. Wyvern Incorporated. Wyvern was formed in 2050 by Arwell Jones, a trillionaire English businessman already responsible for the revitalization of Britain's aerospace sector. After many years of decline in foreign buyouts led to the virtual extinction of the British automotive industry, Jones decided to take matters into his own hands, founding Wyvern with a single goal established at the company's first ever press conference: to make British automobiles the best in the world by any means necessary. Since then, Wyvern has proudly used his words in their slogan, "by any means." With plentiful funds coming from both their founder and the British government, Wyvern would soon become known for their sturdy build quality and utilitarian design philosophy, developing rough but reliable consumer cars, public transport systems, and later on aircraft and spacecraft. Wyvern has had a reputation for excellence in motorsports since long before the AGL was even thought of. They formed their racing division way back in 2062 to compete in land car racing, making it technically the oldest racing team currently competing in the AGL. When G-Tek became prominent on the world stage in the early 2120s, Wyvern was the first established car manufacturer to take an interest in AG technology. They set up a branch to develop an AG device independently of G-Tek, producing their first prototype AG car in 2123 and becoming the second company to begin mass producing them a year later. When Kenta Iwasaki announced the formation of the AGL in 2140, Wyvern eagerly adapted their long-standing racing division for AG and entered competition for the league's inaugural season in 2144. Very proud of their proprietary AG device developed independently from G-Tek, Wyvern has made a point of competing using exclusively self-designed parts and equipment, bending the knee to regulation only when strictly necessary, all to prove that G-Tek does not, in fact, own the whole concept of anti-gravity as a whole. Despite their unquestionable drive, overcoming the series of technical challenges sprouting from their self-imposed rule has proven difficult. These obstacles have resulted in Wyvern's distinctly industrious approach to racing, where pilots, crews, and designers are instructed to take advantage of every possible opportunity to gain an edge over the competition, striving to win by any means. This policy often earns them criticism for their constant rule bending and last-second craft upgrades, but it has helped them to remain a strong contender in the sport for many years. Though they are fiercely competitive, Wyvern has always been careful to avoid making any particular enemies on the track, deeming rivalries with other teams as disadvantageous to their performance. With a racing heritage of nearly 100 years, Wyvern's consistently strong performance in the AGL is no surprise, and going into 2159 they remain as a mainstay of the sport. While some think that their insistence on self-reliance is holding them back, the fact that they're still able to compete at the forefront of the sport is a testament to the wisdom and expertise behind their team. Hyperion Automotive. Since their foundation in 2122 by Finnish entrepreneur Timo Nikkola, AG supercar manufacturer Hyperion Automotive have been renowned by connoisseurs for their top-notch craftsmanship and hated by media executives for their rebellious and controversial advertising stunts. The first company to be created solely as an AG car manufacturer, Hyperion has been on the bleeding edge of vehicle engineering for their entire history, and they are widely considered to be the main pioneers of the AG performance car market. Since they released the first true AG sports car in 2126, They have grown into one of the upper class's go-to brands for high performance and luxurious vehicles, producing an impressive lineup of cutting-edge and record-breaking cars. Hyperion's founder and president, Timo Nikkola, has always had a love for publicity stunts, a fact well illustrated by the oversized tattoo of the Hyperion logo on the top of his head. As a result, Hyperion has a reputation for their somewhat unique approach to public relations, using controversial and sometimes even borderline obscene advertising techniques to bring as much attention to themselves as they possibly can. This has resulted in Hyperion being involved in more than their fair share of media scandals, a fact that Nikkola actually takes pride in, choosing to see it as proof that he and his company are simply funnier than the media can handle. Hyperion created its AG Racing division in response to G-Tech's announcement of the AGL, joining the league for its inaugural season in 2144 with an agile, powerful twin-hull craft. Over the years, they have become a popular veteran team with no particularly odd motifs, innocuously competing in the league to showcase their engineering and promote their brand. Officially, that is. But things have gotten a little more complicated since their latest controversy. After Timo Nikkola made several snide comments about Omnicom's track performance and censorship policies during the unveiling of the yearly upgrades to Hyperion's craft in 2156, the broadcast was scrubbed from Omnicom's media, and Hyperion was issued an official warning for network policy violations. Upon attempting to appeal the decision, Hyperion was repeatedly met with vague answers about how Omnicom reserves the right to curate their platforms as they see fit. Frustrated after exhausting all of their appeal attempts with no real answers, Hyperion issued a blatantly sarcastic public apology, read by Nikkola himself, ending the broadcast by showing footage of every time Omnicom had ever been eliminated from an AGL race. This act of defiance was enough to get Hyperion permanently censored from Omnicom's worldwide media in what has become their biggest scandal to date. Since the debacle, anonymous reports from behind the scenes have sparked rumors of a plot by Hyperion to enact their revenge using the AGL, under-the-table deals with Diavolt to make Hyperion's craft a perfect Omnicom hunter, and even an international coalition of companies striving to undermine Omnicom as a whole. Though some of these theories are supported by recent improvements to Hyperion's combat systems, all allegations have been shut down by Hyperion's representatives, meaning that for now, the rumors will remain rumors. And besides, it's equally likely that all the gossip is just created by Hyperion themselves to bring in even more attention from the whole ordeal anyway. Going into 2159, Hyperion are continuing their traditional focus on agility and shielding, with preseason testing for the 2159 AGL season showing notable improvements to the Ilmatar's defensive capability at no expense to its flight performance. Regardless of their run-ins with Omnicom, Hyperion has a history of consistently strong performance in the AGL, and the quality and professionalism of their engineering speaks for itself. Scorpio Engineering. Originally founded in 2080 as a humble construction equipment manufacturer by Italian engineer Giovanni Rizzo, Scorpio Engineering has since developed into one of the largest companies in the world. After gaining a foothold in the construction market, Scorpio entered a period of strong growth that would see it expand into a plethora of industries, steadily diversifying from a simple construction vehicle producer into a multinational manufacturing, real estate, and finance conglomerate. Considering themselves a driving force behind the revival of Italy's industrial economy, Scorpio now produces everything from construction vehicles to household appliances to spacecraft engines, all branded with the iconic yellow and black logo carried on from the company's construction roots. Scorpio is a recent addition to the AGL's team roster, but they have been involved with the sport since the very beginning. When the plans for the league's first tracks were being laid out in 2140, they were selected as the sole construction supervisor for the project, building all of the tracks that would feature in the AGL's debut season. From there, they would remain as one of the league's main construction contractors, responsible for building nearly half of the tracks on the current schedule. Their position as a major sponsor would get them a spot on the AGL commission early on, but they wouldn't join the league as a participant until a de-advertising debacle involving Omnicom prompted their surprise debut in 2157. Looking for external investment in Scorpio's ongoing expansion into off-world mining operations, current chairman Giovanni Rizzo II headed negotiations with Omnicom to establish a large-scale financing partnership with the American company. Omnicom reportedly spent several billion on audits and legal negotiations, only for Scorpio to cut off talks after a dispute over asteroid claims devolved into open hostility between the two sides. At a late stage in the negotiations, Omnicom surprised Scorpio by insisting that ownership of all purchased asteroids be transferred to them after mining was completed. According to Scorpio's side of the resulting argument, they waited to make this demand until the deal was about to be signed in an attempt to strong-arm Scorpio into giving them the means to cheaply expand their trans-Neptunian communications relay. Having already spent a fortune on mineral rights and frustrated by Omnicom's hard bargaining, Scorpio's negotiators refused to give up the claims at anything less than full price. The resulting impasse would ultimately lead to the termination of negotiations and a heated verbal altercation between Omnicom's spokespeople and Rizzo himself. This left Omnicom's management offended and without a good answer for their shareholders, who were demanding an explanation for the sudden failure of the deal. Out of spite, Scorpio was added to the long list of companies blacklisted from Omnicom's media platforms. All of their attempts to appeal this decision were denied without explanation, leaving them locked out of advertising they had already paid for and unable to reach a significant portion of their target consumer base. Enraged, Rizzo personally oversaw the formation of Scorpio's racing division to bring the advertising to the one place Omnicom is unable to censor, the racetrack. Astonishing the AGL Commission by building a fully fledged racing team from the ground up in only 9 months, Scorpio entered competition at the start of the 2157 season, fielding a heavyweight twin-hull craft quite literally designed to destroy Omnicom. Lovingly and sometimes hatefully likened to a flying brick, Scorpio's craft is recognizable for its bulky square construction necessary to provide the large amount of cooling required for such a compact engine with such high thrust capacity. The craft is built using a unique modular construction, which allows each hull to be quickly detached from the central cockpit engine unit. This allows for extremely fast maintenance on race days, because an entire section of the craft can be swapped out to postpone time-consuming troubleshooting of individual components. As early as Scorpio's first race, it immediately became clear that their primary goal, aside from winning, was to cause as much damage to Omnicom as possible, effectively turning the sport into one giant advertisement for their brand. Omnicom, in turn, attempts to cut Scorpio's races short in order to give them as little exposure as possible, leading to prolonged firefights that frequently result in eliminations. While this costs both teams a fortune and destroyed craft, it also provides plenty of entertainment for the folks at home and brings near constant publicity to both companies, an arrangement that both sides appear very comfortable with. Though Omnicom's media paints them as more of a rogue aggressor than a serious contender, Scorpio have certainly managed to make a name for themselves in racing, and it's safe to say that their constant spectacle of gunfire and explosions has contributed to the AGL's sustained viewership. Heading into 2159 with a growing fan base, a surprisingly capable craft, and a personal grudge that is yet to be settled, it's clear that Scorpio will be a force to be reckoned with in the AGL for as long as Omnicom is still around. Omnicom Technologies. Originally formed by a merger between two already large American companies, the Omnicom we see today is largely a product of the companies that birthed it. The larger half of the merger, Omni Communications, was a telecommunications company founded in 2040 to provide television service to the Chicago area. Omni was able to steadily expand during the turbulent mid-21st century, thanks in large part to its now ubiquitous news network, ONN, growing from a local television provider to a nationwide media powerhouse in the span of a few decades. XL Technologies, the other half in the merger, was a major producer of consumer electronics and communications infrastructure located in Fort Worth, Texas. Itself formed by a series of consolidations in the 2060s, XL had come to control a sizable portion of the worldwide electronics market, working closely with Omni as one of their main providers of broadcasting systems. By the 2090s, both Omni and XL had built a reputation for their aggressive expansion policies. If they couldn't simply buy out the competition, they would try and strangle them into submission. After many years of a close partnership that saw both sides grow into world players in their respective fields, the two companies began negotiations for a merger that they hoped would streamline their operations and propel their growth even further. In 2099, Omni Communications made the largest corporate acquisition in history when it purchased and then merged with XL Technologies. The new company was christened with a combination of its predecessors' names, Omnicom Technologies. From here, the newly formed Omnicom set out to control as much market share as possible in as many industries as possible, prohibited by regulation from establishing a true monopoly in any one field, but still able to take a large slice of as many industries as they wanted. This unprecedented frenzy of expansion would ultimately lead Omnicom to become the largest corporation in the world, keeping their traditional focus on the media sector, while also maintaining large-scale operations in dozens of other industries. Though they are sometimes criticized for their tight media restrictions and so-called monopolistic business practices, Omnicom has brought a long list of new technologies to market with their growth, markedly contributing to the pace of technological development worldwide and improving the lives of countless people. When the AGL was first being organized in the early 2140s, Omnicom was brought on to develop special broadcasting infrastructure for the league, negotiating exclusive broadcasting rights for the first 20 years of the sport's run. They also created an AG racing division to compete in the league for themselves, entering competition for the league's inaugural season in 2144. Since the beginning, Omnicom has maintained a focus on balanced ship design, producing craft that give relatively equal attention to all flight characteristics, and making steady improvements over time. Their current ship, the Series 2, continues this approach, though recent developments have led the team's designers to give extra attention to improving the ship's combat systems in the past few years. Omnicom has long been a popular cornerstone of the AGL's team lineup, but their rather forceful manner of conducting business off the track often sees them at the head of controversy, most notably leading to some major disputes with their fellow AGL competitors. Scorpio, Hyperion, and Diavolt are all at odds with Omnicom, each for their own reasons, though they share the common trait of being banned from Omnicom's advertising networks. Out of those three, Scorpio and Diavolt are especially confrontational on the track, singling out Omnicom's ships with high-powered weapons wherever they can. In spite of this, Omnicom enters the 2159 AGL season like every year before, with high hopes and a higher budget, still utilizing their tried-and-true all-rounder design, and undeterred by the attitudes of their rivals. Regardless of the enemies they've made on the track, they still remain a popular team, and they are a pillar of the AGL, whose long history in the sport can't be ignored. Diavolt Engineering. Diavolt is a long-standing Russian weapons producer founded in 2041. Rising to prominence amid the turbulence of the mid-21st century, the Khimki-based firm spent a long time as a major military supplier for Russia and its allies, developing and mass-producing a wide array of destructive appliances. During this period, abundant funding from the Russian government grew Diavolt into one of the largest defense contractors in the world. However, with military orders dwindling in the world peace of the 22nd century, Diavolt eventually began to struggle financially. By the 2140s, their leadership determined that diversification was imperative to the survival of the company, and began searching for ways to repurpose their assets for civilian use. Knowing that the AGL was on the hunt for ways to further evolve motorsport, Diavolt reached out to G-Tek with a radical idea that they hoped would revolutionize the sport and give them an outlet for their old research. In 2148, the two companies jointly approached the AGL Commission with plans to introduce weapon systems to the league, outlining a roster of different munitions to be specially designed for use during races. This concept turned out to be surprisingly easy to implement into the young sport, because the league's ships were already equipped with energy shielding and emergency pilot survival cells. After a series of rather spectacular demonstrations, the proposal was accepted by an overwhelming majority of the AGL Commission. Once track retrofits and safety testing were completed, combat was officially introduced into AGL races at the beginning of the 2152 season. With the AGL as an established customer, Diavolt decided to double down on AG racing and make a racing team in order to compete in the sport for themselves, entering competition in 2152 alongside the introduction of combat racing. Since joining, they have always fielded a heavyweight craft with exceptional combat systems, utilizing the chaotic firefights of modern races to showcase the full power of their engineering. This combat-centric approach to racing has naturally pitted them against the anti-weapon advocates at Tenrai, who publicly criticized Diavolt for their over-reliance on weapons, and their role in tarnishing the AGL's pure competition by introducing weapons to racing. However, this disagreement was pushed to the wayside when Diavolt was blamed for the Nova Park earthquake. When a mysterious freak earthquake destroyed Omnicom's home circuit of Nova Park in 2157, a team of investigators led by Omnicom's chief engineering team concluded that the earthquake was a man-made occurrence, likely caused by a seismic emitter. In the weeks before the incident, the track had been the testing site for an early prototype of Omnicom's soon-to-be-introduced tremor system, a new upgraded design made to compete with the original version of the weapon introduced to the AGL several years earlier. However, cleanup crews at the site allegedly also unearthed the remains of a seismic emitter chassis manufactured by Diavolt, which the investigation team concluded was the true origin of the quake. According to the official statement issued by investigators, on the day of the incident, engineers were comparing the abilities of Omnicom's prototype tremor system to a Diavolt-made seismic emitter designed for landscape terraformation. Allegedly, this seismic emitter mysteriously failed to shut off, causing a steadily increasing release of seismic energy, which would ultimately cause the earthquake. Luckily, the gradual buildup of the quake allowed for a safe evacuation, but the damage to the area was very extensive. Thus, the investigation concluded by blaming the accident on poor manufacturing quality of Diavolt's products. This claim was fiercely contested by Diavolt. They pointed out what they saw as several glaring issues in the investigation. The fact that Omnicom's staff coordinated the effort and absolved their own company of all guilt. The fact that the seismic emitter in question allegedly shouldn't have been able to generate that much energy, and the so-called suspiciously secretive nature of the whole investigation. They even went as far as to claim that Omnicom had accidentally destroyed their own track with the prototype and planted false evidence on the scene in order to cover up their own carelessness. This led to a worldwide media scandal, with both sides placing the blame squarely on each other and accusing each other of corruption. As a result, Diavolt joined their fellow AGL competitors Hyperion and Scorpio on Omnicom's advertising blacklist, and a lawsuit was briefly fought between them and Omnicom. Though the lawsuit was quickly settled outside of court, and it appears as if the two companies' agreements now prohibit them from making concrete accusations involving the issue, this doesn't stop them from butting heads. Since the scandal, Diavolt has been singling out Omnicom on the track wherever convenient, an approach openly encouraged by their fellow dissenters at Scorpio. Likewise, Diavolt's general reputation is still frequently targeted by Omnicom's media, and the particularly brash attitude of their pilots on and sometimes off the track doesn't help their case. Omnicom and Diavolt make no secret of their contempt for one another, and both teams do everything they can to indirectly allude to their own innocence, while also targeting each other on the track, in an ongoing battle that has raged to this day. Notably, Omnicom would ultimately cancel the development program for their tremor system, opting instead to use a system designed by AGOS. Despite the pressure, Diavolt has always remained determined not to let their disputes take momentum away from their racing efforts, and their craft's capabilities have improved markedly over the years. Despite their involvement in controversy in recent years, Diavolt still stand out as a pillar of AG racing, and as the company that brought about the entire combat system we see in the AGL today, their influence on the sport as a whole is undeniable. Nexus International. Nexus International is the anti-gravity kinetics arm of the European Consortium for Scientific Research. The history of Nexus is very closely intertwined with that of G-Tek. The company initially began life as G-Tek Nexus, a subsidiary of G-Tek, created to pursue development of anti-gravity racing. In the 2120s, as mass production of AG cars began, G-Tek co-founder Kenta Iwazaki saw auto racing as an important opportunity to promote further development of AG on a worldwide scale. He hoped that racing with AG would lead to further improvements on the technology, which would ultimately benefit humanity as a whole. In 2125, he began work on G-Tek's original racing development division, with the dream of eventually establishing a worldwide AG racing series. He requested funding from the Japanese government, one of G-Tek's main financiers at the time, but he was swiftly denied. The bureaucrats were uninterested in contributing to motorsport development. Undeterred, Iwazaki broadened his search and immediately found enthusiastic backing from the European Consortium for Scientific Research, who were severely lagging behind on the AG boom. Looking to use G-Tek Nexus to help develop Europe's AG sector, they supplied more than enough funding for the project and allowed Iwazaki to retain full operational control. With their support, G-Tek Nexus was established at a new headquarters in Salzburg, Austria. From here, G-Tek Nexus began work on their central project, the NX program. Iwazaki had a unique vision for AG racing. His goal was for AG to be a complete paradigm shift in motorsport. Instead of simply adapting the principles of existing motorsports to accommodate AG cars, he and his team set out to create a completely new generation of vehicles. Nearly from the beginning, G-Tek Nexus functioned almost independently of G-Tek Japan, mainly funded by its European backers and using its own facilities and personnel. Development of the NX program continued into the 2130s, and the team's prototypes evolved from simple mock-ups to fully fledged racecraft equipped with nearly all of the technology used on modern ships. In 2133, the culmination of nearly a decade of their efforts was demonstrated at G-Tech's annual Technology Expo, the NX 2000 prototype. Considered by many to be the first true AG racecraft, the NX 2000 achieved a speed of more than 500 kilometers an hour to the astonishment of all in attendance. Though it was clearly an unwieldy and issue-prone prototype, the implication was clear: racing would never be the same. Now an important symbol of AG racing and technological advancement as a whole, the NX 2000 sits on display in Nexus's AG Racing Museum in Salzburg. With the blinding success of the NX program, it had become clear that it was time to start working on plans for an international AG racing series. That year, Kenta Iwazaki and his fellow G-Tek co-founder Tomoya Yamada made an informal agreement to bear the responsibility of ensuring safe, competitive, and beneficial racing with AG, outlining the first plans for the AGL. As part of their agreement, G-Tek Nexus would share its technology with G-Tek Japan before being restructured as an independent company in order to help facilitate mutually beneficial competition in the new sport. Thus, G-Tek Nexus spent the next few years helping to build G-Tek Japan's new racing team, and at the 2140 G-Tek Technology Expo, Iwazaki officially announced the formation of the AGL. Immediately afterward, G-Tek sold its majority ownership of G-Tek Nexus to the European Consortium for Scientific Research, and the company was renamed Nexus International. Taking their iconic blue and yellow color scheme from the NX 2000's testing colors, the newly independent team became G-Tek's first partner on the AGL Commission, entering the league for its inaugural season in 2144. Though Nexus and G-Tek have since taken very different approaches to AG racing, the two sister teams have always maintained friendly and cooperative relations, and Iwazaki and Yamada remain personal friends to this day. While G-Tek focuses on stable improvements to serve as a reference for others, Nexus has always fixated on aggressive innovation and bleeding-edge technology. This approach, coupled with their pioneering experience in racecraft design, has allowed them to become one of the most successful teams in AGL history, fielding powerful ships and highly skilled personnel. In addition to representing Europe in the AGL, Nexus also operates research facilities across the continent, serving as one of the main driving forces of AG development in Europe. Going into 2159, they remain on the cutting edge of the technology, fielding a lightly shielded but blindingly fast monohull craft. The Nexus craft is currently one of two in the league to have a full power top speed in excess of 1,000 kilometers an hour, a position only shared by Orbitronix. Nexus have always been a well-respected force in racing, and given that they essentially built the entire sport from the ground up, it would be foolish to underestimate them. Tenrai Racing Development. Tenrai was founded in 2140 by ex-G-Tek senior engineer Ami Ikeyama. Highly competitive and fixated on innovation, Ikeyama was adamantly opposed to the conservative design philosophy favored by her colleagues at G-Tek's racing division. She argued that as the company that pioneered AG technology in the first place, G-Tek should take an extreme design approach and push the boundaries of AG with cutting-edge engineering. In contrast, G-Tek co-founder and CEO Tomoya Yamada favored a balanced approach to ship design, which would set an attainable example for future league entrants. This disagreement resulted in multiple verbal disputes between Ikeyama and her superiors, ultimately leading to her resignation from the company in 2140. Because she was unable to convince Yamada and their views couldn't be reconciled, Ikeyama left G-Tek and began plans for her own racing team, citing Yamada's influence as a limiting force for her and G-Tek as a whole. Consisting of a group of engineers and technicians cobbled together in a matter of months, Tenrai didn't enjoy the copious funding possessed by G-Tek, but they nonetheless set out to incorporate the very best engineering and technology possible into their ship design. Thanks to the technical expertise and guidance of Ikeyama, the team was able to develop a craft in time for the AGL's inaugural season in 2144, achieving promising results for such a small team. This early showing gave the company lots of attention, including much-needed financial backing, turning them from a tiny group of engineers into a fully established racing team. From here, Tenrai continued to iterate on their design, staying true to their founders' philosophy of producing cutting-edge and uncompromising racecraft, touting themselves as the most forward-thinking team in the AGL. This disciplined mindset, as well as a strong motivation to validate Ikeyama's philosophy by outperforming their natural rivals at G-Tek, allowed them to become one of the most popular and successful teams in the early years of the AGL. They continued in this manner until 2148, when G-Tek and Diavolt proposed to the AGL Commission their plan to introduce combat into AGL races. Ikeyama and Tenrai were very outspoken in their opposition to the idea, rejecting it on the grounds that introducing weapons to racing would make the sport too luck-based and tarnish what they called the purity of the AGL's racing. However, the idea was almost unanimously supported by the rest of the AGL Commission. Ultimately, their objections were brushed aside, the idea was greenlit, and weapons were officially introduced into the AGL for the 2152 season. Not wanting to be left behind in the new era of racing, Tenrai did cave to the pressure and equip their craft with weapon systems, refusing to put themselves at any unnecessary disadvantage against their opponents. They do publicly maintain that combat was a bad addition to the sport, but as a world-class racing team competing at the forefront of the world's most popular sport, they still take any opportunity they can to win races, even if it requires a fight. That being said, Tenrai's craft is among the most lightly armed ships in the league, favoring a lightweight design that drops combat effectiveness in favor of acceleration and agility. This approach has resulted in a design that is highly susceptible to being eliminated, but has very capable flight performance, rewarding a clean and careful racing style. The disagreement over weapons added fuel to Tenrai's old rivalry with G-Tek, as well as putting them at odds with the Russian newcomers at Diavolt. As the teams chiefly responsible for adding combat to races, these two take the blame for most of Tenrai's complaints about the state of the sport. The only other team that shares Tenrai's stance on weapons is Caliburn, whose similar distaste for combat racing brought the two teams into an unspoken partnership while combat racing was under review by the AGL Commission. Though Caliburn ultimately accepted combat racing without much protest, their connection with Tenrai has only grown in strength since they were banned from competition in 2157, both teams now lacking faith in G-Tek and the AGL Commission's leadership. Regardless of their various disagreements, Tenrai remains on the cutting edge of racing technology, and nothing illustrates this more than their Zenshi glassless canopy system. When Barracuda unveiled their Enviro cockpit with the Model A in 2154, Tenrai took note and began development of a similar system for their own craft, implementing it for the 2157 season. Named for the Japanese word for omniscience, the Zenshi cockpit uses an array of exterior cameras to project an image of the ship's surroundings onto digital screens inside the cockpit. Though it is less sophisticated than the Enviro system, the Zenshi cockpit gives the pilot full 360-degree visibility, unmatched by any other ship, ironically even outperforming Enviro. Though Tenrai's performance has been overshadowed in recent years by their complaints about the state of the sport, they are nonetheless an iconic figure in the AGL. With their world-class team of designers and engineers, they continue to strive to win by being faster and nimbler than all of the competition. Caliburn, Brazil. Caliburn, Brazil was originally formed as Caliburn Racing Group, or CRG, in 2134 by Renato Cardoso, a living legend among Brazil's racing scene. With a decade of experience in professional land car racing and twice as much in the underground scene, Cardoso ended his racing career to found CRG with the goal of reviving the glory days of racing before, as he put it, the world became too boring to take risks. CRG operated mostly under the radar for a number of years, hosting a variety of events for enthusiasts disillusioned with the direction that official motorsport had taken. Participants met with anything they could consider raceworthy, including 21st century relics, contemporary vehicles of both wheeled and anti-gravity design, and a number of other oddities. With several ex-professional drivers bringing in publicity and funding, Caliburn was able to expand to a countrywide network of traditionalist, yet innovative racers, engineers, and fans. By 2140, they had become a powerful influence on Brazil's identity in auto racing, even matching the popularity of the professional racing scene that they had long viewed with disdain. Where professional racing organizations seemed to fail, CRG succeeded. When G-Tek announced their intentions to form the first worldwide AG Racing League, CRG saw an opportunity to promote their organization on the global stage and help shape the future of racing according to their ideals. Impressed by the non-restrictive regulations of the new league, they immediately made moves to establish a professional AG racing team, becoming the third official party on the AGL Commission in 2140. Noting Caliburn's popularity and influence, the Brazilian government offered them the position as Brazil's national AGL team, vowing to let them continue operating autonomously while providing the funding required to cement them as a proper contender. They accepted the offer, and CRG was rebranded as Caliburn Brazil in 2141. With strong technical expertise, a large pre-existing fanbase, and plentiful funding, Caliburn immediately established itself as one of the AGL's most popular teams. Since the league's inaugural season in 2144, they have focused their designs on agility above all else, producing extremely grippy craft that are difficult to control but excel on technical tracks. Caliburn has always sought to guide AG racing down a path of open regulation, doing their best to steer the AGL Commission away from tightening the league rules. When G-Tek and Diavolt unveiled their plans to add combat to the AGL, Caliburn was the only other team to side with Tenrai in opposition to weapons, citing that the random chance aspect introduced by weapon pads would make racing too luck-based. This brought them into an unspoken partnership with Tenrai based on their shared opposition to weapons and racing, but unfortunately for them, the rest of the AGL Commission was on board with the plan. Despite the best efforts of the two teams, combat racing was approved by the AGL Commission and introduced in the 2152 AGL season. While Tenrai has remained vocal about their disapproval of weapons in the years since, Caliburn accepted the rule of the majority without much protest, but warned that such rule changes are hallmarks of the so-called over-regulation that CRG was originally created to avoid. This wouldn't be the last of Caliburn's problems with the AGL. In 2157, an anonymous source from within the company uncovered evidence that the iconic lateral canceling stabilization system used to give Caliburn's craft its unmatched agility was against league regulations. The AGL Commission conducted an investigation which concluded that Caliburn had been knowingly violating league rules for multiple years. When all of the evidence came to light, Caliburn was completely defenseless. They received a 1-year suspension from competition and were ordered by league officials to redesign their craft to be rule compliant. Viewing this as identical to the overbearing regulations that were the downfall of previous racing organizations, Caliburn's fans were outraged. When the news fell upon the Brazilian public, the backlash was extensive, with widespread protests, petitions, and even rioting in the streets of Sao Paulo. To date, Caliburn is the only team in AGL history to be suspended from the sport due to a rule violation, and they have made enemies with G-Tek as a result, seeing them as the main opponent in their push to avoid over-regulation in the AGL. Today, Caliburn is in a state of flux. Though their reputation has taken a big hit, and they've had to spend 2158 on the sidelines, the constant stream of announcements and press conferences coming from their design team shows that they are determined to make their new craft a top contender for the upcoming 2159 season. Caliburn is making it clear that when they return, they plan to do so with a vengeance. Protonic Anti-Gravity. Founded in 2125 in Daejeon, Korea, Protonic AG was Korea's first aftermarket tuning shop to specialize in AG vehicles, beginning sales of performance modifications for early AG cars just a year after G-Tek's first production model floated off the factory floor. Over the years, their extensive contributions to Korea's tuning scene earned them a reputation for high-quality craftsmanship and radical design, helping them to progressively expand their parts lineup and bring in more technical expertise. They are most well known for helping to pioneer Korea's now famous AG drifting scene, modifying AG cars with reduced grip AG units that allow them to oversteer and slide in corners. Despite their relatively small size as a company, Protonic has long had a strong influence on Korea's auto culture as a whole, hailed as a go-to supplier for anyone looking to modify an AG car for drifting. With the success of the AGL's first season in 2144, Protonic saw professional racing as a perfect way to attract publicity and spread Korea's AG drifting culture to the rest of the world. They spent a long time gathering funds and expertise before building their craft, planning to bring the drifting scene to the professional stage with a stylish ship that would capture the world's attention. Nearly a decade in the making, Protonic's AGL team made its debut appearance in 2153. Their humble background and dazzling track presence earned them copious press attention for a rookie team, turning AG drifting into an international phenomenon, exactly according to plan. With more publicity bringing in more business and more money, Protonic has been able to expand rapidly since they joined the AGL, becoming wildly popular with the youth, both in Korea and internationally. Unfortunately for Protonic, this success caught the attention of the Barracuda Corporation, who poached a large portion of their core design team by enticing them with promises of money and success. Barracuda used the expertise of these deserters to develop their own drift ship, which is now used in their Model C Drift Racing League. To date, relations between the two companies and their respective fanbases remain extremely bitter. Despite the recent setback, though, Protonic is rapidly recovering and gathering support from new investors and fans alike. With preseason testing for the 2159 AGL season showing strong improvements to their craft's acceleration, Protonic is eager to show off their technical prowess and remind the world that they are the true frontrunners of AG drifting. MTech Research and Development. Established in 2075 by a former Toronto EMT named Victoria Addison, MTech began as a small technical firm producing specialized medical equipment for ambulances and hospitals. A natural leader with a knack for creative problem solving, Addison was able to make the company profitable early on and lead MTech down a path of strong growth and expansion, branching out to more medical applications as more money came in. Still a privately owned company not beholden to the whims of stockholders, by 2100 MTech had grown to become a large player in the medicine industry, developing innovative new technologies for the worldwide healthcare market. With abundant resources and a stable source of funding, Addison turned her attention toward humanitarian goals, using MTech to fulfill a personal quest to bring modern healthcare infrastructure to regions lacking it. As head of the company, she personally oversaw these efforts for 2.5 decades until her death in 2124, when the responsibility was passed down to her daughter Brittany. Commonly credited with several of the world-changing medical breakthroughs of the past 50 years, MTech's contributions to human health have made them an influential and well-respected force in science as a whole, and their humanitarian efforts have only expanded as the years have passed. MTech first became involved with AG in 2131 when they announced their new automotive division and became the first manufacturer to produce AG-equipped ambulances. Their current lineup of emergency vehicles use a special AG unit that gives them a very high maximum hover height, meaning they can be used in areas with uneven terrain or lack of ground-level access. As a leading player in the development of AG-equipped rescue vehicles, in 2140, MTech was contracted by the AGL to develop an unmanned flying droid to keep ships from accidentally leaving the track during races. Essentially taking a normal ambulance and replacing the life support bay with the tractor beam, MTech produced the rescue droids seen in the AGL today, hovering over ships on the start grid and intercepting them if they stray too far out of bounds. Additionally, MTech stands at the ready for any possible trackside emergencies that may occur during events, and the rescue droids are responsible for post-race cleanup of weapon debris and eliminated ships. During the AGL's rapid increase in popularity during the 2150s, MTech expressed an interest in using the League to bring publicity to their humanitarian efforts. This prompted the AGL Commission to extend an invitation for them to compete, and they established a racing team with some preliminary technical help from G-Tek. Competing in the AGL since 2156, MTech are primarily racing to promote their ongoing humanitarian campaigns, and all winnings from events go towards these projects. They also use the League to prototype new vehicle technology, fielding an unusual ship designed around a unique AG unit that incorporates aspects from the design used by the rescue droids. This hybrid design continues to reduce the gravity experienced by the ship even at high altitudes above the track, giving the craft abnormally floaty gliding characteristics that allow for some very high-flying maneuvers on certain tracks. Though they are a very recent addition to the League, MTech's admirable track record and easygoing approach to racing have made them the AGL's newest audience darling, and their ship's performance is rapidly improving as they gain experience. They are steadily becoming an established figure in the sport, and given the fact that their contributions to health science save lives every day, their fanbase can remain confident in the knowledge that MTech's efforts have gone toward making the world a healthier place. The Barracuda Corporation. Barracuda is a very large advanced industrial systems conglomerate that was founded in 2097. Molded from the remains of Korea's former defense research bureaus, Barracuda was created as a way to refactor Korea's old military research for civilian applications at the dawn of world peace. The largest company in the country, Barracuda is now a key player in the worldwide computer, manufacturing, and aerospace industries, specializing in ultra-high-tech engineering and electronics development. Adapting the technology and expertise of their military forerunners, Barracuda has become well known for their high-tech advancements and rigorous secrecy. They have a unique reputation for researching cutting-edge technologies, sometimes miles ahead of their contemporaries, and keeping the few public communications they do issue distinctively terse and ambiguous. Barracuda's initial involvement with the AGL came when they designed some of the League's infrastructure, producing the technology used by the speed pads and weapon pads on AGL tracks. They also developed a line of pilot acclimatization simulators, which are still produced today, designed to condition pilots to different tracks, ships, and speeds. These contributions would earn them a spot on the AGL Commission and put their foot in the door for future involvement in the League. This future involvement came sooner than anyone expected, when a ship called the Barracuda Model A mysteriously appeared on the AGL roster for the 2154 season. In the run-up to the season's opening, Barracuda didn't release any data about the ship, and no press conferences were held, causing rumors to circulate as the world waited with anticipation to see it emerge from the hangar at its first race. It didn't disappoint. Having been secretly developed in an attempt to create what was deemed by Barracuda as the perfect AG racer, the Model A completely outclassed everything offered by the competition. Sacrificing the ability to use weapons for unbelievable speed and agility, it won every race it entered by more than 10 seconds. These amazing results from a newcomer sparked an international sensation that gave a massive spike to AGL viewership, but as the year dragged on and the Model A continued to dominate, many started to become suspicious. Barracuda took full advantage of the AGL's then lax technical disclosure rules, refusing to reveal anything more than the bare minimum specifications of the craft. Even the pilots' identities were barely known. Their interviews were always very short, and they were almost never seen without their helmets on. Naturally, this extreme level of secrecy frustrated other teams and sparked allegations from all sides regarding the ship's design. After half a season of the Model A's domination, collective frustration among all other AGL competitors prompted G-Tek to propose a mid-season rule change that would require all teams to fit weapon systems to their craft and disclose more of their technical data in order to compete. The proposal was swiftly ratified by the Commission in a rather blatant attempt to force Barracuda to redesign the Model A and reveal its inner workings to League officials. Barracuda's stance on the new policy was immediately made clear when their representatives walked out of the AGL Commission meeting and the team's departure from the AGL was announced mere moments later. Ultimately, the secrets of the Model A never made it to the public. To this day, it's still unknown whether the ship actually complied with League rules, though it is very doubtful, and some even still call into question whether Barracuda's mysterious, so-called pilots were actually the ones controlling the ships. Left with a revolutionary racecraft but nowhere to race it, Barracuda went silent once again as they worked to plan their next move. At the final race of the 2154 season, they resurfaced and announced that they would be creating their own league specifically for the Model A, inviting the world's most elite pilots to participate. Since its creation, Barracuda's Model A League has seen strong success, visiting the same venues as the AGL, but offering super fast, super precise, weapons-free racing. Though it may have soured relations between Barracuda and the AGL somewhat, the debacle surrounding the Model A's tenure in the series attracted a lot of attention to the Model A League, allowing it to gain a solid following right out of the gate. This convenient turn of events has caused some to speculate that the whole controversy could have just been an elaborate publicity stunt to bring in viewers for the Model A League, though this has never been confirmed. Since the Model A League became a proven success, Barracuda has focused their efforts on creating more unique racecraft for use in one-make racing series, revealing their second model in 2156. Called the Model B, this ship uses a massively powerful rocket thruster to achieve speeds in excess of the speed of sound, racing on a set of specifically designed circuits in what Barracuda calls the AG Drag Racing League. It is currently the only AG racing ship capable of breaking the sound barrier in normal conditions. 2 years later, they opened up a third special league for drift racing events, using the newly unveiled Model C drift ship on another set of new tracks. All of Barracuda's ships use their proprietary Enviro, or electro-neural vision interface for reaction optimization, glassless cockpit system, a technology adapted from old fighter jet designs inherited at the company's foundation. The Enviro system uses a special helmet that interfaces with the wearer's occipital lobe, to project the craft's surroundings directly into their vision, giving pilots superior 360-degree visibility, and saving weight by eliminating the need for canopy glass. Since it was made known to the world in 2154, Tenrai has developed a similar system for their own craft, using external cameras and digital displays in lieu of neural interfacing. Going into 2159, Barracuda now serves as the host for 3 special leagues running alongside the AGL, offering unique flavors of AG racing that help boost the popularity of the sport as a whole. Though they aren't competing in the AGL per se, Barracuda still has a strong influence on the sport due to the technology they provide in the races they host. No matter what the AGL Commission thinks of them, Barracuda's massive size and strong technical base mean that they will likely remain on the cutting edge of AG development for years to come. Lance Systems Aerospace. Founded as an aircraft manufacturer in 2055, Newcastle-based Lance Systems operated as a primary military contractor of Australia and its allies for most of its history. Over the decades, their lineup of fighter jets became famous for their world-class agility and innovative design, giving Lance Systems a strong reputation for aerial excellence. However, after defense contracts ran dry in the global peace of the 22nd century, they began attempting to diversify to stay afloat. Despite their best efforts, their new lineup of civilian aircraft continually failed to turn a profit, resulting in a period of steady decline that would last for many years. Seeing Diavolt as an example of a struggling ex-military contractor adapting to modern times, Lance Systems followed in their footsteps and used the last of their R&D budget to cobble together an AG research division. On the company's 100-year anniversary in 2155, Lance Systems unveiled the Precision Trials, repurposing their old military flight simulator tech to create an annual series of virtual challenge courses for the AGL's most skilled pilots. They used the data from these events to fine-tune the design for their prototype racecraft, the Precision Delta, in preparation for real-world production. Impressed by the popularity of the Precision Trials, the AGL Commission decided to experiment with using virtual reality as a venue for special events. The selection process for who would make these virtual tracks pitted Lance Systems against the enormous Barracuda Corporation, who used their financial muscle to aggressively undercut every offer Lance Systems tried to make. Remarkably though, Lance Systems was still awarded the contract on account of their more advanced simulator environments and the recent fallout between Barracuda and the AGL Commission. As a result, Lance Systems is now the AGL's main virtual reality development contractor, responsible for creating all of the league's virtual venues. Though the last half-century has been difficult for them, AG Racing has single-handedly saved Lance Systems from bankruptcy. With the continued success of the Precision Trials, the development of new virtual AGL circuits, and the possibility that they may use the 2159 AGL season to test their Precision Delta prototype, it seems like Lance Systems finally has a bright future ahead. Orbitronix Space Industries. Originally located in Wolfsburg, Germany, Orbitronix was formed in 2043 during the infancy of space colonization efforts. From the early years, they set out to capitalize on the explosive growth of the space exploration industry, providing components for some of the earliest orbital colonies ever constructed. As the number of colonies exploded over the next century, Orbitronix grew at a similar pace, going from a small components manufacturer to an industry leader in research, shipbuilding, colony planning, and off-world construction. Thanks to their extensive contributions to spacefaring technology over this period, Orbitronix is often cited as a major force behind the settlement of the solar system, a reputation embodied by the opening of their new central headquarters in the Martian colonies on their 100th anniversary in 2143. In 2150, Orbitronix got their first taste of the AGL when they were contracted to design and build a racetrack into Omnicom's Lunar Orbit Satellite Array, creating the now iconic Luna circuit. Their work on Luna earned them good favor among the AGL Commission, who also hired them to oversee the construction of 6 tracks during the Outer Reaches project. Having been involved in the creation of a number of AGL tracks, Orbitronix formed a racing team to compete in the league and bring extra publicity to their services, fielding what has been jokingly described by their own engineers as a scaled-down shuttle engine with a cockpit and AG unit attached. Orbitronix has a reputation for quality space machinery, and preseason testing on the new Outer Reaches tracks shows that their AGL craft is no different. However they perform in their upcoming debut season, their widespread notoriety and striking ship design are likely to bring them plenty of attention. Messino Anti-Gravity Kinetics Optimization, also known as MAKO. MAKO is the local AGL entry from the artificial island of Messino. The team was founded in 2150 by Manu Kanaloa, a trillionaire Hawaiian-born businessman already made wealthy by his extensive involvement in the man-made landmass project and various undersea mining operations across the Pacific. Better known for his large charity donations, self-named brand of designer sandals, and phobia of bees, Kanaloa developed a personal obsession with anti-gravity after seeing the technology's early success, which led him to form MAKO to serve as Messino Island's official anti-gravity research center. Taking the letters of their acronym from the name of the world's fastest species of shark, MAKO set out to innovate on anti-gravity tech in any way they could. With substantial support coming from their founders' personal wealth, MAKO has become a small but respectable player in AG development, most notably developing the magnetic track floor technology used on some of the AGL's more recent circuits. Despite their relatively small size, they played an instrumental role in the decision to bring the AGL to Messino Island, with Kanaloa himself hosting negotiations between officials during the planning phase. During this time, MAKO put together a racing division in order to represent Messino in the professional leagues, unveiling their team alongside the AGL's announcement of the island's new tracks. From their laboratory complex on the coast of Messino Bay, MAKO has developed a distinctively sleek craft for their opening season, choosing to focus on the ship's handling and combat systems above all else. With ample funding, a capable craft, and an experienced engineering base, MAKO are expected to make a strong start in the sport as Messino Island's official AGL team. Aster Motocorp. Aster was created in 2145 by John Carving, a former world champion motorcycle racer from England. Having been interested in anti-gravity since its initial popularization 20 years earlier, Carving saw the early success of the AGL and the growing popularity of AG-equipped street bikes as an opportunity to revolutionize motor racing with the new technology. He founded Aster out of a warehouse near his home in Essex, with the lofty long-term goal of creating a worldwide AG bike racing league. Lacking the funding and influence to immediately begin planning a racing series, Aster instead began as a small AG sport bike manufacturer, launching their first street-legal model in 2147. They continued to iterate on their designs for 5 years, acquiring more expertise and using Carving's racing fame to gain a loyal following among enthusiasts. Having given Aster a small foothold in the market, Carving, who had thus far been funding the entire operation out of his own pockets, decided to seek out external investment to provide the resources needed to create a racing league for his bikes. A group of Swedish investors took an interest in his ideas, and Aster was bought up and relocated to Stockholm in 2152, with Carving maintaining his position as president of the company. From their new base of operations, Aster used their improved funding to begin work on Carving's idea for an AG bike league. They spent 7 years working to perfect their first racing bike design, entering a partnership with G-Tek to share the technology used by AGL Craft. The resulting machine is the Aster LB221, a cutting-edge, record-setting hybrid between a racecraft and a motorcycle. Equipped with all of the AGL's standard fixtures save for weapon systems, the LB221 takes riders to speeds never even dreamed of previously, over any terrain and with exceptional safety. It's almost as fast as an AGL ship, it can handle off-road riding, its shields allow it to shrug off impacts, and it's basically impossible to fall off of unless you're trying. Since the buyout, Aster has also developed infrastructure for specialized bike tracks, commissioning the construction of 8 circuits in preparation for the league's opening year. Events are scheduled to begin this year, and with preseason tests showing strong results, and every major player in the AGL sponsoring a bike team, Aster is poised to realize the dreams of its founder just 14 years after its establishment.